Chicago, late 1950s. A concrete jungle where life clashed with death every single day. Amid the cold breeze and wailing sirens, a new story was being born. A story that would shake all of America to its core. Brick houses pressed up against each other, graffiti marking every corner, and lives soaked in addiction drifting down the streets. It was here that a boy was born. Larry Hoover. A name that, at the time, was just another hungry child. But within a few years, that very name would become synonymous with fear. But here's the real question. Did Larry become a gangster just to survive? Or was there something inside him, a hunger for power that had always been there? Larry Hoover spent his childhood in the ghettos of Chicago's West Side, a place where every other kid was either in a gang or hunted by one. And Larry, he wasn't just another kid. At just 13 years old, he joined his first gang, the Supreme Gangsters, a small-time street crew fighting for turf control. Back then, Larry had only one goal, to survive, but it didn't take long for something else to emerge. Larry started showing signs of leadership. He was the youngest in the gang, but his mind was sharper than anyone else's. He quickly learned the harsh truths of the streets, the difference between loyalty and betrayal. He saw how, for just a little power, people would shoot their own friends. And then, amidst that struggle for survival, Larry Hoover's name appeared in police records for the first time. Petty theft, assault charge, and early suspicions of gang-related violence. With time, his influence grew. The Supreme Gangsters expanded slowly. But Larry had already started working on a bigger vision. A gang that wouldn't just dominate Chicago, but one that would write its legacy across all of America.
(1969), while America was bleeding in the jungles of Vietnam, a silent war was unfolding on the streets of Chicago. But this war wasn't fought with just guns. It was fought with strategy, with the mind. Larry Hoover was no longer just an ordinary thug. He had seen something most street soldiers never even grasp. He understood the psychology of gang culture, the delicate balance between fear, loyalty, and power. And from that understanding, a new gang was born, the Gangster Disciples. The formation of the Gangster Disciples wasn't a simple event. It was a strategic merger, a powerful alliance between Larry Hoover's Supreme Gangsters and David Barksdale's Black Disciples. Together, they created a force so feared that even hearing its name made the streets tremble. But this gang wasn't just a group of criminals. It was a system, a military-style hierarchy, where every member knew their rank, from top commanders to field enforcers to street-level soldiers. There was order, there was discipline, there was control. To run this machine, Larry created symbols, secret codes, and rigid rules. Some were so complex outsiders couldn't begin to decode them. The 6-point star, pitchforks, devil's tail, these weren't just tattoos. They were signs of an ideology. Every new recruit had to take an oath, loyalty, silence, sacrifice. Gang meetings were held in basements. Strategies were drawn. Hits were assigned. New members were indoctrinated. And Larry? He sat like a king, silent, calculating, always watching. Chicago's underworld slowly began to kneel before him. Drug routes, extortion rackets, illegal gambling. One by one, every operation began falling under the control of the GDs, where once the streets were divided by a handful of small gangs. Now there was one unified empire, the Gangster Disciples. But where there is power, there will always be enemies. The Vice Lords, the Latin Kings, the Black Peace Stones, they all saw the writing on the wall. If Larry Hoover's vision succeeded, Chicago would be lost to them forever. And so began the street wars. In the daylight, silence. But by nightfall, gunshots echoed through the alleys. Rival gang leaders were either killed or forced into uneasy alliances with the GDs, and every victory only solidified Larry's position at the top. But the system had a flaw. The more control he gained, the more dangerous he became. The police and the FBI were now watching him closely. An underground empire was rising, and America's worst nightmare was just beginning. "1970s America, the age of disco. But in the streets of Chicago, only one beat echoed, the rattle of machine guns and the screams of ambulance sirens. This was the era when the name Gangster Disciples was no longer just something sprayed on alley walls. It was splashed across front-page headlines. Larry Hoover's vision had become a reality. The GDs hadn't just taken over the streets, they had captured entire neighborhoods. On every block, lookouts, in every alley, presence. The streets belonged to them. But behind that wealth and power was blood, a lot of blood. The 1970s and 80s marked a dark turning point for America. A wave of cocaine and heroin flooded the nation. And wherever drugs flow, money follows. And for money, blood is just the cost of doing business. The GDs built an entire drug distribution empire, from international suppliers to street-level pushers. Their network was so refined that local law enforcement couldn't even figure out where to begin. But where there's money, there's greed. Turf wars erupted once again. The Latin Kings raided GD territory. The vice lords executed a known GD leader. The next morning, 3 bodies found with a handwritten note, "GD Nation will not bow." The headlines screamed louder than ever. Chicago turns red, gang violence on the rise. Children shot in crossfire as GD-VL feud escalates. The public was furious. The streets were burning. And then came the FBI. They declared Larry Hoover a criminal mastermind. According to the reports, over 50 murders were tied to the GDs. Some bodies were never even identified. Drive-by shootings, execution-style killings, car bombings. And in every investigation, one name kept resurfacing, Larry Hoover. But when the FBI came after him, they found nothing. Because Larry's system was airtight. He never gave direct orders. No phones, no letters, only coded messages, hand signals, and face-to-face meetings. Larry Hoover was no longer just a gang leader. He had become a myth. The streets now called him King Larry. His name had become a symbol. For some, hope. For others, pure terror. But the FBI wasn't about to let a myth go unchallenged. Behind the scenes, a silent operation was taking shape. An operation designed to shake the very foundation of Larry Hoover's empire. The year was 1973. Both the Chicago police and the FBI had zeroed in on one name, Larry Hoover. Every file, every sting operation, every confidential meeting had one purpose. The boss must fall. And then came the morning that made headlines across the city. Larry Hoover was arrested, charged with murder. The victim, William Pookie Young, a local drug dealer who had allegedly refused to follow GD orders. According to police, Larry personally ordered the hit and sent his crew to finish the job. As they walked him away in handcuffs, reporters screamed, "Is this the end of the Gangster Disciples?" The courtroom offered no mercy. Larry remained mostly silent during the trial. No fear, no remorse, just a cold stare. The verdict, life imprisonment without parole. He was sent to Stateville Correctional Center, a maximum security prison reserved for America's most dangerous criminals. Most people thought the story ended there, but in reality, this was just the beginning, because within just a few months, something strange started happening. The GD's street operations still active, new recruits were showing up, the drug flow remained untouched, rival gangs were still getting hit. How was this possible? The leader was now locked behind bars. The FBI and prison intelligence launched a covert investigation, and soon their suspicions began to grow. Was Larry Hoover still running the empire from inside the prison? Rumors said he was passing orders through face-to-face visits, legal consultations, and even using religious sermons laced with coded language. One insider put it simply, Larry didn't have a phone in his cell, but his words still shook Chicago. Inside those prison walls, Larry formed a new group, a spiritual political movement called Growth and Development, a new name, but the same ideology. Many believed it was just a rebrand, but the streets knew the truth. It was the Gangster disciples, evolved. The government was baffled. Was this a true transformation or just a new mask for an old empire? Larry Hoover may have become a prisoner physically, but mentally, he was still the king. And now, a chilling question haunted America. Did they lock up a gangster or hand even more power to an underground emperor? A concrete cell, 4 walls, high security surveillance, metal bars where people breathe but don't really live. But for Larry Hoover, this wasn't a prison, it was a throne. When Hoover was brought into Stateville Correctional Center, the system believed he was now powerless. But in reality, the real game was just beginning. Inside the prison already existed 2 powerful forces. The Black Guerrilla Family, BGF, politically radical, Gangster disciples, GDs, still loyal to Larry. Hoover studied the balance between them, manipulated it, and slowly, quietly reclaimed his command. A new language began circulating in the prison. Coded messages, instructions hidden inside legal mail, encrypted notes passed through lawyers, and yes, even contraband phones smuggled in through food packets, shoes, and sometimes human bodies. The gang's structure had now evolved. Street and prison, 2 arms of the same body, and all of it moved under one command. Wait for the word from the chairman. Then, Hoover made an unexpected move. He publicly announced that the Gangster disciples would now be known as Growth and Development. A formal mission statement followed. We are no longer criminals. We are educators, mentors, leaders. Prison officials were stunned. Was this a gangster's redemption or just a psychological mask? Many social workers and politicians were impressed. They started community outreach programs in Larry Hoover's name. But the insiders knew the truth. Growth and development wasn't reform. It was a rebrand. Inside the prison, secret meetings began to flourish. In chapel rooms, legal libraries, and even the prison church. These weren't sacred spaces anymore. They were unofficial offices. Larry Hoover's influence now stretched beyond his gang. He became the godfather of prison politics, settling disputes, preventing race-based riots, maintaining control with one simple rule. Order must come from the top. One former inmate confessed, if Hoover said calm down, riots would stop. If he said strike, prison went to war. The system believed that isolating him would destroy his empire, but all they really did was lock a lion in a cage and make his roar louder. And the outside world, still asking the same haunting question, is Larry Hoover now a changed man, Or is he a silent emperor still ruling his empire from the shadows? December 9th, 2021. The stage at the Los Angeles Coliseum lit up like a war zone of lights and sound. Two hip-hop giants, Kanye West and Drake, stood side by side on the same stage. But this wasn't just a concert, it was a political statement. Behind them, glowing in giant letters, "Free Larry Hoover." This moment became a global spotlight. Kanye, whose own father was a former Black Panther, declared boldly, "Larry Hoover should be released. He's a political prisoner now, not a gang leader." What started as a concert soon erupted into a national movement. Petitions flooded into the White House. An official clemency request was sent to the Biden administration. But as the campaign gained momentum, so did the opposition. Victims' families went on live television, voices shaking, eyes filled with grief. He didn't just run a gang, he ruined lives. Our brother, our son, was murdered on his orders. Former FBI agents weighed in too. The Gangster disciples are still active, still violent, and their founder still commands respect from behind bars. That's not a coincidence. The debate split the nation in half. Is Larry Hoover a misunderstood revolutionary or a criminal mastermind still ruling from the shadows? Supporters said he now promotes education, peace, and guides youth away from gangs. But critics call it a well-crafted illusion, a fresh coat of paint over the same old empire. Insiders whispered that growth and development is still structured like a military unit. Codes, ranks, orders, loyalty. Is this a transformation or just repackaging? Documentaries are being filmed. Interviews are going viral. Public opinion is in chaos. Some call him a black revolutionary, misunderstood by a broken system. Others call him a godfather who traded street corner bullets for prison politics. The White House remains silent. No final decision. And so, one question hangs in the air, unanswered, unsettling. Is Larry Hoover a man who deserves redemption or a shadow king who never truly stepped down? Years have passed, the headlines have faded, but Larry Hoover's name still lingers in graffiti on the walls, in cryptic rap lyrics, in sealed courtroom files, a name not erased, just buried deeper. The Gangster disciples are still active. New York, Atlanta, Detroit, Houston. Their underground presence has been confirmed across multiple cities. The same structure still exists, the same ranks. Minister of Literature, Governor, Chairman. And at the end of every chain of command, one chilling reference, the Chairman. Is this just tradition? Or has Larry Hoover's name evolved into something darker, a shadow command that still echoes in silence? Young gang members, many of whom have never even seen Hoover face to face, treat him like a messiah. To them, Hoover is a symbol of resistance, of order in chaos, of fear disguised as leadership. And the myths, they're infinite. Some say he created an invisible ink code system still circulating inside prison walls. Others claim a secret Council of Seven still operates under his name. And some swear on their life, "I got orders from the chairman just last year." This isn't just eerie, it's deeply disturbing. America's modern gang landscape is still stained by Hoover's legacy. Prison reform policies, law enforcement briefings, community outreach agendas, all circle around one lingering name, Larry Hoover. He may be locked away in a high-security cell, but his influence, his ideology, that can't be caged. One former gang member whispered it best. He's not just a man anymore, He's a myth, and myths don't die. And today, when a new recruit takes the oath, when GD symbols get sprayed on street corners, when encrypted messages flow through prison walls, one question still hangs in the air. Is Larry Hoover truly gone? Or is the real empire still whispering from the shadows? But Larry Hoover isn't the first man to build an empire from the shadows. Centuries ago, another name sent fear across the world. A boy abandoned by fate who rose to become the most feared warlord in human history. Tap the video on your screen now to uncover the legendary rise of Genghis Khan, a tale of power, fear, and an empire that changed history.